History isn't always written by the victors. Sometimes it's captured by a camera shutter in a fraction of a second. Frozen moments that refuse to let us forget, even when we desperately want to. Today, we're looking at 25 photographs that America would rather you didn't see. Not because they're graphic or gratuitous, but because they're true. And truth, as they say, is often the first casualty of memory. These aren't just pictures, they're witnesses, and they have stories to tell. September 4th, 1957. 15-year-old Dorothy Counts becomes the first black student to attend Harry Harding High School in Charlotte, North Carolina. Look at her face. Look at the faces around her. This is what bravery looks like. Not the absence of fear, but walking forward despite the hatred screaming at your back. Dorothy lasted only 4 days at that school. The harassment was so severe, her parents withdrew her for her own safety. But this photograph, it lasted forever. 9 years earlier, in 1948, George McLaurin became the first African American admitted to the University of Oklahoma. But admission didn't mean acceptance. The university forced him to sit in separate areas, a desk in the hallway, a designated table in the cafeteria, a roped-off section in the library. They couldn't deny him education, so they tried to deny him humanity. April 1960. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his young son remove a charred cross from their front lawn in Atlanta. Imagine explaining to your child why someone burned hatred into your yard. Imagine teaching your son that this is the price of demanding equality. The civil rights movement wasn't abstract. It was personal. It was terrifying. It was necessary. America built its prosperity on small backs and small hands. January 1909, Globe Cotton Mill, Augusta, Georgia. This child should be in school. Instead, she's operating machinery that could easily claim her fingers, her hand, her life. Newberry, South Carolina, December 1908. Children, some barely tall enough to reach the machines, working shifts that would exhaust grown adults. September 1908, Brown Mine, West Virginia. A boy sits in darkness, driving coal carts through tunnels that could collapse at any moment. These weren't isolated incidents. This was the American economy. Pinboys in Trenton, New Jersey, working past midnight, because apparently entertainment was more important than childhood. And let's not forget the Chinese laborers who built America's railroads under conditions so brutal that thousands died. They connected a continent while being systematically excluded from the country they helped build. March 25th, 1911. The Triangle Shirtwaist factory fire in New York City kills 146 workers, mostly young immigrant women, because the owners locked the exit doors to prevent theft and unauthorized breaks. This photograph shows the protesters mourning their deaths. It took tragedy to spark change. It always seems to. 1922. Young women paint watch dials with radium, making them glow in the dark. Their employers told them the paint was harmless. They were instructed to lick their brushes to make finer points. They were never warned. They were never protected. Their bones began to glow. Their jaws crumbled. They died in agony while their employers denied responsibility. Speaking of medical ethics, or the complete absence thereof, the Tuskegee Syphilis Study. For 40 years, from 1932 to 1972, the U.S. Public Health Service studied the progression of untreated syphilis in black men. The men were never told they had syphilis. They were told they were receiving free health care. Even when penicillin became the standard treatment in 1947, researchers withheld it to continue their observations. 400 men, 40 years, all to watch what happens when you treat human beings like lab rats. The 1950s, when America fell in love with the atom and forgot to fear it. 1953, swimmers at a Las Vegas motel casually watch an atomic bomb explode in the distance. This wasn't secret. This was entertainment. The government conducted over 900 nuclear tests on American soil, often with inadequate warnings to nearby communities. Soldiers were ordered to march toward mushroom clouds. Civilians were told to duck and cover. Harold Edgerton's Rapatronic camera captured this image in 100 millionth of a second, 30 milliseconds after detonation. It's beautiful and terrible, like staring directly at humanity's capacity for self-destruction. We learn to split the atom before we learn to handle the consequences. Segregation wasn't just ideology. It was infrastructure. The Memphis Zoo in the 1950s allowed black Americans entry exactly 1 day per week, Thursday, as if equality could be scheduled. And then there's this. American citizens of Japanese descent forced from their homes after Pearl Harbor. Look at this family returning to Seattle in May 1945, released from the Hunt, Idaho internment camp. They lost their homes, their businesses, their constitutional rights. This photograph shows Seattle citizens watching from a bridge as their Japanese-American neighbors are evacuated. Some watched with sympathy, others with satisfaction, most with uncomfortable silence. 120,000 people imprisoned without trial, without cause, without apology, until 1988, when the government finally admitted what everyone already knew. This was wrong. Not all tragedies are man-made, but human decisions often make natural disasters worse. 1935, Stratford, Texas. A dust storm approaches, part of the Dust Bowl that displaced millions and starved thousands. Poor farming practices turned prairie into desert, and families paid the price. The Harold Washington Library in Chicago displays 58,307 dog tags, one for each American soldier killed in Vietnam. Each tag represents a name, a family, a future that ended in rice paddies and jungle. March 16, 1968. My Lai, South Vietnam. American helicopters hover over a village where soldiers murdered between 347 and 504 unarmed civilians, including women, children, and elderly people. This photograph exists because photographer Ronald Haberle documented what he witnessed. Without his camera, would anyone have believed it happened? Emmett Till's mother, held back by friends as her son's casket is lowered. She insisted on an open casket funeral, saying, "Let the people see what they did to my boy." Martin Luther King Jr.'s 1963 mugshot, arrested in Birmingham for the crime of demanding equality. These photographs are uncomfortable because they're supposed to be. They document the gap between American ideals and American reality. They show us who we were, who some of us still are, and who we promised ourselves we'd never be again. History doesn't stay buried. It just waits for someone brave enough to dig. Remember what the camera saw. Because once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. And maybe that's the point.